Ever get the feeling that history is this neat straight line, always going upwards?
Yeah, like we're standing right at the pinnacle.
Exactly. Sipping our, I don't know, boba tea. Looking back thinking, well, they didn't have this.
Right. Primitive. Simple.
But we'll hold on to your hats because today we're kind of detonating that whole idea.
We absolutely are. We're plunging headfirst into this wonderfully weird world of lost knowledge, vanished technologies.
Stuff that suggests our ancestors. Maybe they weren't just chipping flint, you know?
Maybe they were a lot more technologically savvy than we usually give them credit for.
Welcome, you magnificent mind, to your deep dive. You've handed us some seriously brain-bending material, and our mission, as always, is to dig up the most fascinating, the most wait what moments just for you.
And our guidebook for this little expedition into the past, it's Benjamin B. Olson's Lost Knowledge, the concept of vanished technologies and other human histories.
Think of it as like a map to a different kind of history.
Exactly. One where progress isn't this smooth upward slope. Maybe it's more like a roller coaster.
With some serious drops. And maybe even loops we didn't know existed.
Could be.
Oh, and this isn't your standard history lesson. We are talking potential ancient flying machines.
Seriously sophisticated stuff, potentially.
Mirrors that could maybe see inside you. Or across the world.
Makes modern surveillance look a bit tame, doesn't it?
And the really big one, this idea that history, technologically speaking, might just repeat itself.
Yeah, that's a mind bender. We'll be hopping across continents, different eras.
From dusty scrolls to, legends that just won't go away.
It's a truly global hunt for clues about maybe collective amnesia, technological amnesia.
Now, before we completely scramble your perception of reality in a good way, we promise, just a quick heads up, if you're enjoying this kind of deep dive, if you like exploring these forgotten corners of ingenuity,
and you want to join us for more adventures that'll make you sound incredibly smart at parties,
then go ahead, hit that like button, maybe subscribe. It genuinely helps other curious folks find us.
It really does. Okay, and now, let me introduce your guide for this journey.
Oh, stop.
No, really. She has this amazing ability to take these complex, tangled ideas and just sort of smooth them out, show us the connections we'd probably miss otherwise.
It's great to be here. Prepare yourself, because we're about to dive into something genuinely awe-inspiring.
Get ready to have your assumptions, maybe playfully challenged.
And maybe catch a glimpse of some really extraordinary possibilities from the past. Okay, let's unpack this thing. Where do we start?
Well, I think we have to start with the big picture, this fundamental question about historical progress itself.
Right, that linear versus cyclical idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is it just this steady upward climb? Each generation neatly building on the last.
The way we usually think about it, like cavemen, then agriculture, then cities, then us with iPhones.
Right, or is there evidence, as Olson explores, for something more cyclical?
Yeah.
Periods of really significant technological achievement, followed by decline, collapse even, where knowledge just vanishes.
So civilizations hit these peaks, maybe develop amazing stuff, and then poof, it's gone. And later societies have to reinvent the wheel, literally or figuratively.
Precisely. And we see hints in the archaeological record sometimes, don't we?
Yeah, the book mentions finding evidence of sophisticated techniques or tools that just disappear.
Yeah.
They're there in one layer, and then for centuries afterwards, nothing similar. It's baffling.
It really is. And it clashes so hard with that dominant Western idea of linear progress. Thinkers like Heilbronner, Steiner.
Yeah.
They articulated this view very clearly.
The idea that we're always moving forward, always improving.
And from that perspective, suggesting ancient folks might have had tech comparable to ours, or even better in some ways.
Yeah.
It can seem, the book uses the word absurd.
It messes with our timeline, our sense of order, like finding, I don't know, a microwave oven at Stonehenge.
Exactly. It just doesn't compute easily within that linear framework. But Olson says, okay, archaeology is one thing, but what about the texts?
Ah, the stories, the descriptions.
Right. The accounts that talk about advanced technologies, even if we haven't found the physical proof yet. Things like, flying machines.
And this is where it gets really juicy, doesn't it? Because how do we read these old texts?
That's the absolute crux of it. The challenge is interpretation. Olson stresses you have to be meticulous. You have to try and shed your modern biases.
Which is hard.
So hard. You need to understand the text in its own cultural world, its own language. There's a quote in the book about needing to grasp the original fabric of meaning.
Otherwise, you just project your own ideas onto it.
You misinterpret, almost guaranteed. So when an ancient text mentions a, say, sky chariot.
You can't just immediately dismiss it as pure fantasy because we haven't dug one up.
Exactly. You have to ask, what did that phrase mean to them? And this leads to this really fascinating idea about myths.
That they aren't just fairy tales.
Maybe not just. What if some myths are actually carriers of important information? Barber and Barber, mentioned in the book, suggest this.
Like a way to package knowledge?
Kind of.
That's
like
them.
Poetic encoding. A way to embed scientific observations or technical knowledge or historical events into a story.
That's memorable and easy to pass down through generations.
Precisely. Instead of a dry technical manual nobody would remember, you wrap it in a compelling narrative.
Okay, so the details might sound magical to us now, but maybe they were just describing something real, something advanced, using the concepts and words they had available at the time.
It's like a game of historical telephone, but the original message might have been surprisingly sophisticated.
And the book gives examples of seemingly modern ideas popping up really early, right?
It does. Plutarch, for instance. In his Life of Lysander, he's talking about rotational motion, celestial bodies. It's this blend of early cosmology and like actual empirical observation.
Wow, so they weren't just passively watching the stars, they were trying to figure out the mechanics of it all.
And sometimes hitting on insights we think came much later. So, okay, we have these textual hints, these potential coded messages. But what about pure speculation?
Yeah, because there are tons of books out there, right, making these really wild claims about ancient astronauts or super civilizations.
Oh, absolutely. Olshan mentions authors like Hancock, Childress, people exploring these very speculative ideas.
But he makes a distinction.
A crucial one. He argues that historians of science and technology shouldn't just dismiss these accounts out of hand. They should actually investigate them.
How so?
Using proper research techniques. Rigorous analysis, treat the text seriously, analyze the language, compare accounts across cultures.
Apply the historical method to the mystery, basically.
Exactly. And instead of just saying that's impossible, ask, what could this account actually mean in its context?
And maybe find a pattern.
Perhaps. And Olshan argues this kind of scholarly investigation can lead to really good scholarship and honestly incredibly fascinating reading. The thrill of discovery shouldn't just be for fiction.
Okay, I'm sold. Let's get into some specifics. You mentioned flying machines.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Prepare for liftoff. This is one of the most captivating areas.
Buckle up, everyone.
The book looks at accounts of flying vehicles from all over the place. Let's start in China.
Okay. China, what have they got?
Well, there's the Dewang Shiji. It tells this story of the Qigong people who supposedly built a flying machine powered by wind. Okay, pretty cool. But then it says it traveled. Wait for it. 20,000 kilometers.
20,000. That's insane. That's like halfway around the world.
It's an unbelievable distance, even today. Olshan rightly points out, okay, maybe textual corruption, maybe exaggeration over time.
Sure.
But still, the core idea, a sophisticated, long-range, wind-powered aircraft. It's remarkable. Another version mentions just one inventor, Qigong, but the distance is still staggering.
What else from China?
There's the legend of Liu Ban, a master craftsman.
Okay.
He supposedly carved a wooden crane that could fly 700 landies. Again, a significant distance.
A wooden bird that could fly.
Yeah. But here's the kicker detail. It says the bird's wings would subtly move or adjust when rain was approaching.
Whoa. Like a weather sensor?
Could it be hinting at some mechanism sensitive to barometric pressure? That would be an incredibly advanced understanding for the time, like a built-in weather forecast.
That's wild. A mechanical bird with weather prediction?
It suggests something way beyond just a simple carving, right? And the connection to carpentry is interesting, too. The skilled artisans might have been the ones with the practical know-how.
Makes sense. Any others?
There's Han Zihei's story of another wooden bird. This one flew off to a peaceful and happy world in the West.
Okay, that sounds a bit more fantastical.
It does, but Olshan notes that even here, the underlying implication is that the mechanisms and methods used could, theoretically, be adapted for functional flight. It's like the concept of mechanical flight was there.
A transferable idea.
Exactly. Though, interestingly, a much later encyclopedia writer, Yi Qiuyong, included the Qigong legend, but was totally skeptical.
Oh, really?
Yeah, basically said, where's the proof? So even back then, there was critical thinking about these stories.
Good point. Okay, we're next on our world tour of ancient flight.
Let's head south to South Asia, India. We find the Samaragana Sutrata.
Right, I've heard of this. It describes Vimanas, doesn't it?
It does, but the language. It gets a bit tricky. Sometimes they're called birds, sometimes houses, even temples.
Houses, temples, flying temples?
Olshan suggests that maybe house or temple implies something large, maybe boxy or rectangular.
Okay, like a platform.
Possibly, maybe with propulsion at the corners. Some translations mention 4 strong boxes, or jars. Imagine a big, stable craft lifted by multiple power sources.
Using words they understood to describe something totally new.
Precisely, like trying to describe a car to someone who's only seen ox carts. And the text itself deals a lot with architecture, so the temple analogy makes sense in that context.
But the technical details are fuzzy.
Often quite obscure, yes. Presented almost esoterically. Not exactly an IKEA instruction manual for building your own Vimana.
Maybe to keep the knowledge secret? Or just the difficulty of describing it?
Could be either, or both. It definitely makes it harder for us to figure out exactly what they were describing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's swing west. What about Europe and the Mediterranean?
Did they have similar stories?
Well, Needham and others mention accounts of mechanical birds, Aulus Gellius, Regimantus's mechanical eagle. And later, Francesco Lana theorized about vacuum lift airships.
So mechanical birds, yes. But what about people carrying machines?
That's the thing. Compared to the Indian, Chinese, and Korean tales, there seem to be fewer ancient Western accounts describing vehicles specifically designed to carry pilots.
More myths like Daedalus and Icarus.
Exactly. Or Lucian's story of riding giant birds, often more allegorical or fantastical, lacking those specific mechanical details we sometimes see in the Eastern texts.
Interesting difference. Even though we know they had complex mechanics, like the Antiquity mechanism.
The capability was there,
Yeah.
but the detailed textual descriptions of human flight seem rarer in antiquity. Now let's take a fascinating detour.
Where to?
To the indigenous Ainu people of Japan. Their traditions, the Kamuyukar.
Divine narratives.
Yeah. And they talk about a kain shinta, literally a metal shinta that could fly.
A metal flying machine in Ainu folklore.
Right. One story tells of a god arriving in a flying chariot that was roaring and rumbling, and it landed precisely.
That's roaring and rumbling. Sounds mechanical.
Doesn't it? Even in brief descriptions, you get sound-controlled landing. And get this, the Ainu often call themselves sky people.
No way.
And have a core myth about their ancestors coming down from the sky on these Sinta.
Wow. So flight is like fundamental to their origin story.
It seems deeply embedded in their cultural memory. Okay, hop over to North America. The Hopi people.
What do their traditions say?
They describe a flying shield used for travel,
A flying shield.
accompanied by lightning, thunder, and kakinas appearing as clouds. Very dramatic imagery.
It also sounds quite powerful technologically.
And they also describe a flying gourd. Specifically says it was mechanical, activated by pulling a cord. It made a humming sound.
Pulling a cord.
Humming.
It sounds very specific.
And another hissing round aerial vehicle that could carry people. Again, those mechanical details are striking.
Okay, this is getting wilder. Where else?
How about Oceania? The Caroline Islands.
Middle of the Pacific.
Yep. A tale about a man who dreams about a special lightweight wood to build a flying machine, specifically to rescue his kidnapped wife.
A rescue mission via homemade aircraft. I love it.
And the story emphasizes the machine-like operation. No magic words needed. Interestingly, a bird even uses the man's creation at one point, again highlighting its practical nature.
Okay, one more stop. Medieval Europe.
Let's touch down there. Chaucer's Squire's Tale features a brass horse,
Ah, the mechanical horse.
explicitly mechanical, controlled by the writhing of a pen turning a pen.
Like controls.
And the strange knight gives clear operating instructions. It's presented as technology, not magic.
So across all these cultures, these recurring stories, could they just be about kites? Kites were common, right?
Especially in China, yes. Kites have a long history. But Olshan argues pretty convincingly against these stories just being about kites.
Why?
Look at the details. Vast distances traveled way beyond a kite. Specific materials mentioned, like metal or special wood. Descriptions of internal power sources, not just wind. And controlled flight, navigation.
Yeah, kites don't really do controlled long-distance travel with pilots.
Exactly. These texts seem to be describing something fundamentally different, suggesting a potentially much higher level of aeronautical understanding, even if expressed through the language of myth and legend.
Mind-blowing. Okay. From the skies, let's come back down to Earth, sort of. Magic mirrors. What's the deal there?
Right, another fascinating category. These magic mirrors pop up all over ancient literature. And again, Olshan asks, should we just label them fiction and move on?
Or could there be more to it? Let's hear some examples. China again.
Let's start there. The Shijing Zaji again. It talks about a mirror found in Emperor Gaozu's treasury
Okay.
that could supposedly reveal the internal organs of anyone standing in front of it.
Seriously? Like an ancient X-ray or MRI?
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Mm.
The same text mentions other weird devices, like a jade wind instrument that could show distant scenes and sounds.
Distant viewing and hearing, like ancient television or radio.
It's a bizarre mix of what we call magic and technology, and
Right.
apparently there were claims this diagnostic mirror was even displayed publicly later during the Three Kingdoms period.
Which adds a layer of, like, maybe it was realness?
Or perceived veracity, at least. Another text, the Kaiyuan Tianbo Yishi, also mentions a mirror that could illuminate inside a patient's body.
Okay, that's a recurring theme, seeing inside the body.
Definitely. Now, bronze mirrors were common in China, and people believed they had magical properties, like warding off evil.
Standard mirror magic stuff.
Right. But these specific texts describe something else entirely. Penetration, seeing through things, or seeing distant things.
Not just reflection. Anything similar elsewhere.
How about Javaka, the Buddha's legendary physician?
Uh-huh.
Supposedly had a magic gem, not a mirror, but a gem with fluoroscopic abilities. It could light up the inside of a person for diagnosis.
Same concept. Seeing inside without cutting, that desire seems universal.
It really does. Then you get into the Arabian Nights, King Solomon's mirror.
What did it do?
A huge circular mirror that let him view the 7 climes of the world, like seeing the whole known planet. Similar to a mythical Persian cup that could do the same.
Global surveillance. Okay, Europe. Medieval times.
Yep. The Story of Cleimades features a mirror that shows events happening a mile away.
Mile. That's specific.
And interestingly, the mirror is explicitly linked to the special wood used to make a flying horse. Again, that blend of magic and tech.
They seem intertwined.
They often do. And think about Roger Bacon, much later, 17th century. He was writing about envisioning devices for long-distance hearing and seeing.
So maybe these earlier writers were doing the same. Imagining possibilities?
It suggests the capacity to conceptualize these things existed long before the tech did. Even Chaucer's Squire's Tale, back to the magic mirror, reveals infidelity, distant actions, blurring those lines again.
So how do we categorize these? Fiction, nonfiction, wishful thinking?
Olson's point is that trying to force them into our modern boxes of fiction or nonfiction might be missing the point. It's anachronistic.
Their worldview is different.
More holistic, perhaps. They might have embedded rational ideas or observations within stories that seem fantastical to us.
Yeah.
Discussing technology wasn't confined to, technical journals. It happened in stories, poems, epics.
So not necessarily lies, but maybe expressing ideas and aspirations in the forms they had.
That seems to be the argument. Okay, from flying machines and magic mirrors, let's go big picture again. The big one. Atlantis.
Ah, Plato's lost continent, the ultimate lost civilization story.
It really is. Plato's dialogues, the Timaeus and Critias, give us this picture of a civilization with advanced technology, amazing architecture, canals, military organization.
It is geographically specific, right?
Very. Plato places it beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the Strait of Gibraltar. A huge island, bigger than North Africa and Asia Minor combined.
Wow.
And it was supposedly a gateway to an even larger continent beyond the real sea. This suggests a really expansive view of world geography back then.
More than just the Mediterranean basin.
Much more. It connects to the Greek idea of the oikoumene, their known world, but hints at lands beyond. And interestingly, Olsson mentions a potentially contemporary Chinese text, the Shanhaijing.
What does that say?
It's a classic of geography and myth, and it also mentions a great flood. Could there have been some shared knowledge, or a common source for these flood myths and lost land stories?
The tantalizing thought. And Plato talks about cycles of destruction, right?
He does, in the Laws and Timaeus. He discusses how floods or other catastrophes wipe out most of humanity, leaving only, isolated hill shepherds.
And the sophisticated knowledge gets lost.
Exactly. Because the survivors don't have the infrastructure, the specialized skills. Plato even has a character in the Laws specifically mention how vehicles get destroyed and construction techniques are forgotten.
So the Greeks themselves understood that technology could be lost.
Clearly, it wasn't a given that things always progressed.
Mm-hmm.
And the description of Atlantis itself in the Critias is so detailed.
Yeah, the rectangular plain, the canals.
The Great Canal with its immense specific dimensions, the internal canals for transport and irrigation, the military structure, the 10 kings, the laws inscribed on orichalcos.
It sounds so planned, so specific, not just a vague mythical island.
The level of detail really makes you wonder. Was he drawing on older legends, using it purely as a philosophical allegory, or maybe a mix of both. It's the ultimate historical puzzle.
Okay, staying with Plato. What about the Ring of Gyges from the Republic?
Ah, yes. The invisibility ring.
The classic interpretation is it's a morality tale, right?
Yeah.
About power corrupting. Gyges finds the ring, becomes invisible, does terrible things.
That's the standard reading.
Yeah.
Shows how fragile human virtue is without accountability.
But Olshan suggests another layer.
Or a complementary one, yeah. What if Plato's also using this story to comment on technological power itself?
How so?
Think about it. The ring is a piece of potent, unseen technology. Its power destabilizes everything. Perhaps Plato is drawing a subtle parallel to the dangers inherent in the kind of advanced, powerful society Atlantis represented.
Ah, so Atlantis is the macro story of tech power gone wrong.
And Gyges is like the micro story, a more allegorical exploration of the same theme, what happens when individuals wield immense, unchecked technological might.
That adds a whole new dimension, especially when you think about Glaucon's argument in the story.
Right. That people are only good because they lack the power to be bad. The ring just reveals the truth.
It feels incredibly relevant today, with technologies that give individuals or groups immense power, often operating invisibly, data, algorithms.
Are we all grappling with our own versions of Gyges' ring? It's a chilling thought, definitely. Which brings us to another huge theme. How do you preserve knowledge over really long timescales?
Yeah, if civilizations rise and fall, how do you stop hard-won knowledge from just vanishing? Especially today, with everything digital.
Exactly. Rothenberg's work on digital preservation is crucial here. It's not enough just to store the data.
You need the hardware, the software, the context.
Right, you need the whole interpretive system. Otherwise, future generations might find our digital archives, our USB sticks, or cloud data, and it'll be completely meaningless. Like that image from A Canticle for Liboids.
The post-apocalyptic monks finding a shopping list and treating it as sacred text.
Because they've lost the context. It's a powerful warning. Recording isn't enough. Understanding is key.
So how did ancient societies try to preserve knowledge?
Through all sorts of ways. Oral traditions, epics, myths, as we discussed, monumental architecture, inscriptions. Plato mentions the Egyptian priests meticulously keeping records.
But even then, interpretation is key, right? The priests had to understand the records.
Absolutely. Which brings us back to myths. Maybe they were a surprisingly robust way to transmit core information, even if details got warped over time. Studies suggest myths can encode real data.
Like a durable narrative-based storage system.
Potentially. Think about modern attempts like the warning markers for the Yucca Mountain nuclear waste site.
How do you warn people 10,000 years from now about invisible radiation?
Exactly. What symbols, what language will they understand? It's an immense challenge, trying to communicate across deep time.
So maybe myths and stories, combining history and warning, were an effective strategy. Like the idea of an atomic priesthood preserving nuclear knowledge through ritual after society collapses.
It's a fascinating, if slightly terrifying concept. Apic's play RUR, using characters named after Plutarch's figures, shows how history can be repurposed to teach lessons about technology and ambition.
And there are other examples.
That Armenian text about Enoch writing on durable stelae to survive future floods and fires.
Anticipating catastrophe.
And even anticipating that language itself would change and become corrupted over time. A sophisticated awareness of the fragility of knowledge.
It seems they were really thinking about these long-term cycles.
Jewish tradition also hints at powerful, perhaps ethically complex, antediluvian knowledge. Modern writers like Gregory Benford explore this deep-time communication problem. Even someone like Athanasius Kircher believed myths held precious things, real insights hidden in allegory.
It wasn't just Western cultures thinking this way.
Not at all. Stanner's work on Aboriginal Australian knowledge systems, The Dreaming, shows incredibly complex information embedded in traditions totally different from Western academia.
Or even something like cryptozoology, studying lake monsters and Bigfoot.
Olshan suggests that even folklore about unknown creatures, like the Malay Orang Pendek, might preserve genuine historical or anthropological memories, however distorted.
So we need to be careful about dismissing knowledge systems just because they don't look like ours.
Exactly. Lucretius wrote about early humans developing tech. Vickers argued Plato saw myth as a valid way to understand things beyond logic. It challenges our neat categories.
Okay, but did everyone in the past think things used to be better and knowledge was lost? Were there ancient proponents of progress?
Oh, definitely. Wang Zhang in China, A real rationalist.
What did he argue?
He directly attacked the Golden Age idea in his Lunhang. Said, nope, life is actually better now, materially speaking.
He thought his time was better than the past.
Yeah, he even used omens and stuff to argue his era was one of universal peace and prosperity, a total rejection of the decline narrative.
That's fascinating. A voice for progress back then.
But then contrast that with those Ainu stories we mentioned.
Right, where they explicitly remember flying in the past and see the present as decrepit.
So that debate, progress versus decline, seems ancient itself. Even Chaucer, with his mechanical horse, shows tech can be amazing but also used to deceive. It's complex.
Speaking of complex and maybe unsettling, tell us about the City of Brass.
Ah, yes. From the Arabian Nights. It's such a haunting story.
What's it about?
Explorers find this incredible silent city in the desert, filled with wonders but deserted, and it has these robotic-like beings, automaton.
In an ancient story. Wow.
Descriptions that sound very much like it, and the most chilling part is finding the inhabitants, the merchants,
Yeah.
just sitting there, perfectly preserved behind their market stalls, but dead, like time just stopped. It feels eerily science fictional.
What could that possibly mean?
The lack of proper burial, the suddenness, it strongly suggests a moral fable, maybe divine punishment for pride or misuse of knowledge like other ancient cautionary tales.
A warning embedded in this incredibly strange, futuristic imagery.
Exactly, it sticks with you. But, knowledge isn't just in texts or grand stories.
What else is there?
Think about skills. Manual dexterity. The Taoists wrote about this. Intuitive mastery that goes beyond just following rules.
Like a master craftsman who just knows.
Right. Or Jean Fresnel in the Renaissance, believing his era was rediscovering lost ancient knowledge, suggesting cycles of learning. There are all sorts of views. Velikovsky's catastrophe theories, early Christian interpretations.
Ancient writers themselves, like Ovid or Censoranus, were trying to figure out origins, how knowledge moved through time, sometimes trying to rationalize myths.
It seems the puzzle of the past, those moments that don't quite fit the anachronisms, that's often where the real fascination starts for us now.
And we have to remember our way isn't the only way.
Absolutely crucial. Our modern scientific and historical methods, they're recent. Other cultures had and have incredibly effective ways of transmitting knowledge.
Like the Aboriginal Australians you mentioned.
Embedding vast amounts of information into stories, songs, dances, rituals, things that don't fit neatly into our academic boxes.
Or think about learning a physical skill, like dance.
Right. Martha Ullman West made that point. You can write down dance steps, but it's nothing compared to learning directly from a master. Embodied knowledge, tacit understanding.
So maybe myths were highly efficient ways to transmit complex info, and we need to take them more seriously.
Olshan certainly argues for that. These ancient efforts to capture and pass on the past, even if they seem strange to us, deserve our respect and attention. We shouldn't just assume primitive means simple-minded.
William Irwin Thompson's call to look beyond linear history seems relevant here.
Very much so. The past isn't as remote or alien as we sometimes think. If we approach it with the right mindset, like Finley's idea of a dialogue.
We can actually start to understand their perspectives.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So wrapping this amazing journey up, we've covered a lot. Ancient flight, magic mirrors, Atlantis, how knowledge survives or vanishes.
We've seen how this idea of lost knowledge runs through so many cultures, hinting that maybe the past was way more complex and technologically interesting than the standard story suggests.
And these seemingly wild tales, maybe they hold real insights if we look closely enough.
Insights into technology, society, philosophy. Absolutely.
Which leaves us, our wonderful listeners, with that final provocative thought, doesn't it?
Always.
If so much could potentially be lost and rediscovered throughout history, what knowledge might we be overlooking right now? Or be in danger of losing?
Especially in our digital age, are we too focused on one kind of knowledge preservation?
Maybe we need to question our own linear assumptions and look for wisdom in places we don't normally expect, like those less conventional ways of preserving knowledge.
It's a crucial question. A really vital one to think about as we navigate our own complex times.
Thank you so much for joining us on this truly mind-expanding deep dive. We really hope you'll check out Benjamin Olshan's book, Lost Knowledge. It's an incredible read.
Definitely worth exploring further. Until next time.